Hello everyone, this is Giuseppe from Cobalt Image. Today we will talk about the Elite Kodachrome pack. Kodachrome is probably one of the most copied color looks in photography. And everyone knows the name and everyone has an idea of what Kodachrome should look like. Rich reds, deep blues, strong contrast, travel photography, family slides, projected transparencies, basically nostalgia. But that it's also the problem. At some point, Kodachrome became more than a film, it became a memory, and many Kodachrome inspired looks are built from that memory. Warm colors, more contrast, more saturation, a vintage feeling basically. And the difficulty is that the Kodachrome was not just a mood, it was a very, very specific color structure. Reds, greens, blues, skin, shadow and highlights all behaved in a particular way. And if you don't have a real reference, you're not really emulating Kodachrome, you are just emulating the idea of Kodachrome. That is where the real bottleneck appears, the key 14. Kodachrome was inseparable from its development process. Once the key 14 in 2010 disappeared, building a serious Kodachrome reference became extremely difficult. You could still find those slides, you could still find scans, but a random scan is not a film. A scan is the film plus the original exposure, aging, storage, the scanner, the software, and every unknown correction made after that. We can look this serious. This is impressive, it's wonderful, it's honestly incredible, by colors, by feeling, but this has been edited, heavily edited, corrected, improved. This is not anymore the original. It's something different. So the question becomes, are you emulating Kodachrome or are you emulating an old scan of Kodachrome? For the Elite Kodachrome, we wanted to avoid that problem. After a long search, we were able to form from the real Kodachrome material processed through the authentic Key 14 workflow that gave us that what's missing, real slides, real Kodachrome behavior, and a controlled foundation of the profile. This is why Kodachrome, the Elite Kodachrome, is not just a one generic Kodachrome preset. It includes different Kodachrome references. The Key 64 2009, the 1987, and the Key 25. And each one comes in a different interpretation, not balanced and projected. So you're not just choosing Kodachrome, basically selecting this pack. You're choosing which reference and which way of experience that reference. Closer to the raw slide behavior, more natural and controlled, or closer to the feeling of a projected transparency. To prove what we did, we photographed the same subject on the real Kodachrome 64 and Sony A1 II in the same light at the same moment. So the real question is simple: can the digital file be moved into the same color logic as the real slide? And doing that, not making it look old, not adding the fake nostalgia, or not crushing blacks or pushing saturation. We want to do that matching the color relationships, blue, shadows, highlights, density. So let's start comparing a real Key 64 slide of 2009 with the Sony A1 II file processed with the Elite Kodachrome. Let's do it. Before we compare these images, one technical clarification. The Kodachrome slides here are calibrated TIFF files, adjusted as carefully as possible around the white point. But this is not a perfect chart-based comparison. For that, we would have needed a color checker in the scene, so every gray in the color patch could be aligned precisely. There is a small variable in this digitalized slide, and also, of course, as usual, on the edited file from a digital camera, there's also a variable on white balance without a color checker in the scene. The actual Elite Kodachrome profile was built under a much tighter laboratory margins, of course. What we're doing here is a real-world validation. Same subject, same light, same moment, real Key 64 on one side, and Sony A1 on the other side with the Elite Kodachrome. So I'm not asking you to look for a picture-perfect match, of course. I'm asking you to look at the color relationship, skins, reds, greens, blue, shadow, highlights, density, and whether the digital file moves in the same value logic as the slides. So let's start from the first image. Okay, so we have the reference here on the left, the slide. On the right, we have the digital file. Of course, you see the difference on sharpness. The feeling is totally different. The starting points require a reduction of contrast because we added some small amount, no, an average amount of contrast on our balance profile. We put on the same level exposure, almost the same level. As you can see, we're not matching. We add the Kodachrome 64 2009 balanced, and voila, that's the match. We should reduce a bit the contrast because the slide is very little contrast. Now you see we have the emulation applied on a row, kept as short, and we're not even touching the white balance. You see the difference. There's no difference. The same color signature. Another test. Same approach. We increase the saturation, the exposure, we reduce the contrast, and the color not matching. Now the color match. Same approach, just the profile applied on a row, and we matching the slides. This is a more complicated benchmark. As you can see, the digital is completely different from the starting point. Oh, we could improve. Increase the exposure, reduce as well the contrast, apply the profile. Boom. Oh, we're not matching. Why? Because the luminance in that case, it's quite wild. It's quite later, and the proper luminance has been not achieved by the camera in a shot, so we put that something like cloudy. Oh, and that's it. We have a match. Using the Adobe, using the Kodachrome. So that it's to show you how close are our emulation compared to the actual slide shot on the real Key 64 and developed with the real Key 14 process. Now it's time to test the color emulations with the real world photos. I picked a small selection image. We're not going to test every single image, just showing how easy it is to achieve the Kodachrome signature with just a few clicks for any image. We can start from this image, which is a fun image. We will start creating a copy just to show you on the same page how different will be the image with the emulation. You see, the sky, it's changing. Skin tone, dark skin tone, now it's more, I would say, goldy. And the general feeling of the picture, even is just a balanced one, it's not extreme, because we know by experience on elite profiles that the balance is the easy, the less powerful profile when we apply an emulation. With not balance, we see the cast, the purple cast typical by the scan, no calibrated scan, and with a projection, the PR version, we see how strong it is compared to the starting point, the final output. Of course, after we apply the profile, we can use the Cobalt panel to give some, some films feeling like, I don't know, some vignette. We can pick the low, the high key. If I pick the low key, we can manage how much will be that. We can wash it a bit. And the output will be stronger. Depends by the taste. So it's not only about colors, it's about the feeling of the picture. But we talk just about colors. This is the main difference, just made by a profile application. We can check different pictures. There is a Eiffel Tower. Look how strong is the Kodachrome 25 balance. Boom. There's no big jump. There is a jump. There's no big. You see the tones are changing. Of course, we put no balance. We still have the cast, the purple cast. The projection is stronger, but still keeping the style of the balance. We can pick something different with the reds. Reds are quite important to show how powerful is the emulation. Let's use a 64 90 87 balance. You see the reds? These are the Kodachrome reds. On digital, yeah, of course, on digital. We're talking about digital profiles, so the contrast, the super contrast, the feeling of, the perfection of the details, the sharpness is typical by a digital file. But the colors, yes, the colors are Kodachrome colors. Here as well, 64 balanced. Is a big jump? No, it's not a big jump, this picture, but it's a jump. And It's a jump on the whole dynamic range of the picture between shadows and highlights, colors. Yeah, we can see it. Of course, we put a balance, a projection. Difference, it's heavier. And let's see something different with a lot of blue and maybe a polarizer in the field. Yes, the same here. Skin tone, different. Sky is darker. Of course, this picture requires something on exposure. You'll see at the end. The general contrast is changing, but the colors are still aligned on what we're going to expect by Kodachrome. We can check also something like that, perhaps something like that. With the projection, you see how strong become a picture. Seems coming out from a National Geographic newspaper on the 90s. Maybe we just watch it look. Yes, that's the general feeling. So this is Kodachrome, and we are very happy to show you how accurate and good are the set we offering on our websites. I hope you enjoyed this video and see you for the next one.